Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive into a really powerful week, November 24th to the 30th, 2025. It's this huge astrological
It
inventory,
really is.
and we have some fantastic source material to work with. There's the technical analysis, Astrologie Inventaire Emotionnel, and then we also have this beautiful narrative reflection from the StoryScope of the week.
Right, the one about Elara, the gallery owner in Marinsel.
Exactly. And the sources, they're both pretty clear. This week is bringing, well, a lot of emotional intensity, some major endings, and these really sudden, almost necessary shifts.
Necessary is the key word there.
So our mission here is to use these planetary movements as a guide for what? A radical, honest audit of our relationships, our finances, our core values.
Your whole sense of self-worth, really. It's a profound auditing week. The energy, you could almost call it relationship weather, mixed with these really serious structural demands.
And what are we supposed to do with that?
Well, the sources say you're being asked to choose intention over habit, courage over fear. I mean, this isn't a casual week. This is about making firm choices about who belongs in your life, what deserves your time, and, where your energy needs to go to set up your future.
And there's a warning, isn't there? To get that clarity, we have to stay deeply honest, grounded. The insights we get this week, they're not just fleeting thoughts, they're foundational.
You have to use them wisely. You really do.
Okay, so let's dive right into the biggest structural event, the one that sort of sets the tone for the whole week.
That would be Saturn. Saturn going direct in Pisces on November 27th.
Right, Saturn moving direct. For anyone who might not track the difference, what does that shift? From retrograde to direct, what does it actually mean, especially for a heavy hitter like Saturn?
It's a huge deal.
And why do the sources call it the harsh light of reality? I mean, that sounds painful.
It can feel destabilizing, yeah, but it's ultimately restorative. See, when a planet is retrograde, its energy is turned inward. We're in this long period of review, and it can feel vague, confusing, stalled out. Especially with Saturn, which rules structure, boundaries, commitments.
So we've been reviewing all that since July.
Precisely. And when Saturn turns direct,
Brakes come off.
the brakes come off.
Exactly.
The energy moves outward, and it demands concrete action based on everything we've been reviewing. So that harsh light of reality, it shatters illusions. If you've been in denial about a commitment, a relationship, a boundary, that denial is suddenly just impossible to maintain.
So this is the universe basically forcing us to clear out all the emotional cobwebs that have been clouding our vision.
Yes. Clearing away anything that has interfered with our discernment, our judgment, and the timing is so critical. We are laying the final groundwork before Saturn shifts into Aries next February.
Which starts a whole new 29-year cycle.
A huge new cycle. And we have to enter that long, productive period with what the source calls uncompromised wisdom.
Uncompromised wisdom. I love that phrase. It's so compelling. But okay, if these illusions we're shattering were, comfortable, how do we stay grounded when everything feels chaotic?
The grounding actually comes from the clarity. The specific insight here is that you can now finally see the difference between a vision with possibility and just a fantasy we chose to believe.
Oh, okay.
Pain comes from realizing you invested in the fantasy. The wisdom comes from realizing, okay, I can pivot now and invest in what's actually possible. This whole shift, it supports making firm decisions, acting with purpose, because that fog of uncertainty is finally lifting.
And we see that perfectly in the StoryScope. With Elara in her gallery, she sees this beam of light that reveals all the dust and cobwebs she'd been ignoring for months. And it felt like truth itself had stepped inside, forcing her to sweep away illusions and stop avoiding these major decisions about her life and her business.
That structural shift always reflects back to our personal reality. It demands that internal inventory. And that audit, well, it begins pretty intensely right at the start of the week.
Okay, let's go there. Monday's energy. It's described as a kind of emotional pressure cooker. We have Venus in intense Scorpio connecting with a still retrograde Mercury.
This is the peak of the emotional accounting. I mean, Venus in Scorpio makes any talk about love, money, value. It makes it incredibly forthright, intense even. The audit is asking you, what truth are you ready to face? And superficial answers are just not going to cut it.
And because Mercury is still, walking backwards, slowing everything down, the sources give that very specific warning about the timeline. Agreements are not getting signed right away.
Not at all. Any settlements might not even be finalized until late January. And that delay is so crucial to understand because a retrograde Mercury, it stirs up old messages, old memories.
Then old flames.
Especially old romantic interests. The energy is famous for bringing old flames back from the past. You might get an unexpected call, find yourself rereading old texts, but there's a very strict warning here. You're in review mode, not construction mode. Avoid starting new relationships right now.
But isn't there a huge risk then, when an old flame comes back, that you just romanticize the past and mistake this review for a restart?
Absolutely. That is the danger. You have to filter them through that new Saturn clarity we just talked about.
Yeah.
Were they a vision with possibility, or were they just a comfortable fantasy? The whole point is to get closure, not to restart old, flawed cycles.
Which brings us straight back to Elara and Rowan, the sculptor. Their partnership had ended abruptly, in silence.
Yeah.
And when he reappears, they're forced into this really honest conversation.
And the source is specific about it. It wasn't polite talk. It was the kind of conversation that opens doors inside the chest. They aired old wounds, misunderstandings, and crucially, no immediate solution, no quick fix. But the honesty itself, it softened the air between them, and that is Monday's work. Intense truth without the need for an instant resolution.
So we start the week with this harsh clarity and these really intense, delayed emotional negotiations. It sounds exhausting. But the good news is the weather shifts pretty beautifully midweek.
It really does.
Let's talk about Wednesday, which the sources call one of the loveliest days of the year. We've got Venus trine Jupiter and Saturn.
This is the reward for all that hard emotional work. It's this perfect blend of warmth and structure. After all the auditing on Monday, Wednesday lets our relationships find stability again. Conversations just, they flow. They feel kinder, more productive.
And I want to emphasize, this isn't just some fluffy, feel-good day. The aspect supports healing old patterns with both softness and accountability. How do those two things actually work together?
Well, the accountability comes from Saturn. It insists we hold the boundaries we just fought to establish. But the softness, that comes from Venus and Jupiter. It lets us implement those boundaries with compassion and empathy, not anger or bitterness. It really rewards emotional transparency.
So if you speak your truth.
If you speak openly about what you feel and what you need, your deepest desires can find this incredible balance. It helps you give and receive in equal measure.
Sounds like the perfect day to aim high then. If you're looking for romance or negotiating money or just deepening a connection, the source says to shoot for the stars.
It is, absolutely. Because the energy wants us to find beauty in simplicity, not scarcity. If you feel like you have to overcomplicate things, you might be coming from a scarcity mindset. This day says, trust that if you're honest, what's meant for you will show up simply and generously.
And this is the moment where that structural clarity from Saturn going direct really starts to integrate, right?
Precisely. Saturn isn't vague or confusing anymore. It helps you tap into your intuition with positive, productive results. It brings structure back to those areas that felt so directionless. It all starts to unfold. And those dreams, the ones we decided were possible visions, not just fantasies, they start to take on real, tangible shapes.
The week is just so perfectly designed. Get the heavy lifting done early so you can move forward, which takes us to the end of this transformative journey late in the week.
Yes, and the late week brings these two powerful and very contrasting shifts. First, on Saturday, November 29th, Mercury finally moves direct in Scorpio.
Thank goodness.
It officially ends that intense period of introspection and review.
So we shift from analysis to action. Ideas get clearer, our inner narrative gets a bit gentler, and there's just this profound emotional clarity influencing our thoughts and our words. It must feel like a huge relief.
It's a massive shift. The source says it so beautifully. A serene harmony is making its way back.
What?
We spent 3 weeks reviewing. Now for the next 3 weeks, we start acting on what we found. The communication blockages start to dissolve. We can finally move forward.
But of course, astrology rarely gives us a totally clean break. What is the massive speed bump that hits immediately after on Saturday? It sounds like we achieve this serene harmony and then just hit a brick wall.
We do. Venus opposite Uranus retrograde. And this is where you just have to stay flexible. Uranus is the planet of disruption, rebellion, unexpected change. When it opposes Venus, the planet of love, value, connection, it brings this profound disruption to all the norms. Relationship dynamics can change in an instant. Money matters feel totally unpredictable. And the need for autonomy and freedom is just incredibly high.
So if you just spent days negotiating a very delicate relationship boundary, this aspect might just throw a grenade right into the middle of it.
It'll definitely test it. It demands space. If a relationship is already tense or codependent, this is where the break can happen. The need for personal autonomy just overrides everything else. Breakdowns, separations are possible, especially if people haven't been radically honest or if one person feels trapped.
The advice is pretty clear then. Stay flexible, expect plans to change fast, and do not cling to old expectations.
You can't. Elara felt this in the StoryScope. She felt this restless energy, this unexpected urge for freedom that had nothing to do with her gallery. And she consciously chose to give that uncertainty space instead of, forcing a decision or clutching at what was familiar.
That's the perfect response,
It
really.
is. The whole point of that Venus-Uranus opposition is to get to a clarity that's based on truth, even if that truth is disruptive, even if it requires sudden independence.
So after all that intensity, we coast into Sunday, which seems to offer this tender, beautiful resolution. We have Venus trine Neptune retrograde.
This is that dreamy, emotional softness the sources promised. It's a wonderful day for shared vulnerability, forgiveness, creativity, a connection that feels really meaningful. Love, compassion, empathy, they just flow so easily. After the shock of Uranus, this aspect lets us gently reintegrate.
But whenever Neptune is in the mix, there's always that little layer of illusion to watch out for, right?
Absolutely. The main cautionary note here is that we tend to see the absolute best in other people. You might find yourself romanticizing a relationship or a financial opportunity,
Oh.
blurring the lines between hope and reality. So enjoy the emotional high, enjoy the creative flow, but keep a logical eye on any major commitments.
And finally, the week ends with a huge shift in the emotional tone. Venus moves out of intense Scorpio and into fiery Sagittarius, where it stays all the way through Christmas.
And this is the dramatic tonal shift we've been working toward all week. The heaviness just dissolves. It's replaced by humor, optimism, joy, laughter. We move from being so concerned with control and analysis to focusing entirely on growth, exploration, purpose, and our own evolution.
So we start craving excitement and passion. We're drawn to people and situations that appreciate life's bigger meanings.
Mm.
In Marin's home, the source notes that laughter returned to the streets, and Elara felt her own creativity just open up like a window. She was suddenly drawn to new ideas, new environments.
It is the well-earned reward for a week of really hard emotional work. But the sources do include one final crucial warning tied to this lighthearted energy.
Which is?
While we're craving adventure and freedom, we have to be careful about fiscal irresponsibility or just abandoning our structural commitments. Just because someone or something is exciting doesn't mean they're the whole package, or that you should jettison the stability you just fought so hard to create.
That is the perfect note to bring it all together.
Yeah.
So to summarize this deep dive, the week really pushes us toward radical honesty with that tough Mercury-Venus audit. That clears the structural path with Saturn going direct, which ultimately leads us to this lighter, more adventurous future that Venus and Sagittarius is promising.
Right. And the key through it all has been integration and accountability. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, the sources really emphasize that we have to learn to cherish the love and connection that thrives in freedom while making sure those dynamics still support our personal growth. The clarity and stability you got midweek have to be carried into the wave of enthusiasm that arrives at the end.
This whole journey has demanded that we define clear boundaries and recognize exactly where we gave our authority away. So I guess here's the final question for you to reflect on. Since you fought so hard for that structural clarity and stability this week, how do you make sure that the incoming energy of Sagittarius, which really favors freedom and lighthearted interaction, doesn't lead you to abandon the foundational structure you just created? Where does your newly found freedom meet your essential stability?